Hello, I'm Dan Ware. Welcome to another Frankly Franklin. If you watch this program very often, you know that I enjoy reminiscing about the Franklin of days gone by. And over the years, I've had several guests who were fixtures around the square in Franklin. People like Larry Dixon at Sullivan's, Robert Graves from Moore's Rexall Drugs, Ronald Dunn from Dunn Brothers Radio and TV. And when I was growing up here, the place I went to buy my back-to-school clothes was Young's Department Store, which was located in what I guess was a prime spot, the corner of Main and Cedar Streets. And that building, I think, is empty now, maybe undergoing renovations. But I have with me somebody who remembers that building and probably as much or more about Franklin than I do. I'm happy to welcome Bill Young, who has been a resident of Franklin for, gosh, how long, Bill? 60 years, probably.
Since 1927.
Since 1927. So he's been here a year or two, and I thought it would be fun to ask Bill to come in and talk about the town and some of the changes that he has seen over that period of time. So, Bill, what brought the Youngs to Franklin in 1927?
Well, my father, the first 5 or 6 years of his marriage, moved from Tennessee to California to Florida, back to Tennessee, and we end up here in Franklin, Kentucky. Jim Draper, a friend of my father's, and Mr. Darwin were opening these stores, and they called my dad in Carthage, Tennessee, said, "Herbert, we're going to open 3 stores, and one in Elkton, one in Bowling Green, one in Franklin." And I was in the first grade, and I remember us coming up and going through Franklin and driving over to Elkton. And when we got to the Logan County line, it was a dirt road all the way into into Russellville. We went on over to Elkton, then we came back, went to Bowling Green, came back to Franklin, and Dad made the remark, said, "This is pretty square, and Kate, I believe this is where we ought to take this location here." And
okay.
He's said to me many times that was one of his lucky days in his life that he chose Franklin. And he says, well, the number one lucky day is when I married your mother.
Yeah, yeah.
And
well, now I remember Draper and Darwin as being on the east side of the square, kind of a little past Midway. Was it always in the same location?
No, it wasn't. There was when we came to Franklin, the McElwain and McGuire Bank had closed.
Okay.
Next to that building was Law's Grocery.
Okay.
And then the next building was the Draper and Darwin building.
Okay.
And the next building was an IGA store. Mr. Turner had it.
Okay.
So as some years go by, why Dad, Mr. Turner, he closes that store and that building. I think that the Hayes shoe store was in there last, or I believe, I don't know what's in that building now. I believe
okay.
it's...
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
It's
yeah.
a contracting company, I believe.
Oh, yes,
Well,
right.
anyway, Dad and the Drapers bought that building, and they moved from that third building from the corner to the fourth building on the corner.
Did the square, when you came here, did it look a lot like it looks today, or is it a big difference?
Well, there's a lot of difference because some businesses have changed their facade and their looks, and a lot of them modernized over the years. The 2 main sides of the square where the business was really done, the over-the-counter business, was on the south side and on the east side. The north side, there was a butcher shop and a grocery store, and there was a furniture store down there where Crabtree Furniture used to be. Massey's, I think, had that. But the main business was done at that time was on the east and south side.
Well, you know, I mentioned when I was growing up that I bought clothes at Young's, and I used to go to Moore's, and they still had the soda fountain. Now, when you were a kid, did they have a soda fountain at Moore's, or did you go to Moore's?
Yes, sir. Well, we had 3 drugstores: Sugar and Hunt, Arnold's, and Moore's, and all three had soda fountains. That was perhaps one of their main, took up as much space in the store as anything else did.
And had, at least in my day, after school, there'd be pretty good crowds, but I had the impression that they all did pretty good business, didn't they?
Well, they did. They all had excellent business. When I was in high school, I worked as a soda jerk there at Sugar Hunt's. And between Sunday school and church was a busy time because that's when a lot of the high school kids or the older young people, I'd call them, would come into Sugar Hunt's, and they'd get a Coke or call them cheese snacks between church and Sunday school.
Did you have a little hat that you wore?
No.
In the movies, the soda jerk's got the hat on. Well, so I guess you would have gone to the city schools.
Yes.
Right? This was before they consolidated.
That's
is that
right.
Okay.
I finished the first grade here. In fact, Eunice McClendon, I was in her first class that she taught.
Oh, really? Yeah, I remember her.
I was in her first class after she graduated from college.
And where was the school at that time?
Well, it's where the elementary school is now, and it's set way back off the road, back up there, and had huge columns in front of it. And the front yard had some, not a lot, but some play equipment. And you get a heavy rain, and you see on the east side of Main Street, from I believe it was Mars Street, all the way down to the school was an open ditch.
Oh.
And you get a heavy rain, and the schoolyard would fill with water.
Yeah. And well, I think that problems getting rid of rainwater probably persisted, and we'll talk about this a little later. But you wound up being mayor at some point and still had to deal with where to put that.
Still had a problem with water, yes.
Did you work any at Draper and Darwin?
Yeah, that was when I got out of school, I had to go to the store and help put up stock, and I know we'd get in overshoes. We sold a lot of overshoes, and our overshoes would come in about September, late August, and we would put them in the basement. And that was my job, to get cases of overshoes down in the basement, or else we'd get in shoes and help put up stock. And my job was to sweep the store out and clean it up and wash the windows,
What sort of stock, what did Draper and Darwin sell? Was it primarily things to wear?
It was primarily clothing, and back in those days, why most of the business that we had was from the farmers. We sold a lot of overalls, work clothing, a lot of shoes. We sold piece goods and ladies' dresses. It wasn't a fashion shop by any means, but it was the merchandise of the day that we sold more or less the needs. And it was quite different, and I still say that Draper and Darwin was one of the early birds in mass merchandising. We string socks and hang them from the ceiling in bunches and string them separately, so we'd have socks on there 10 cents a pair, and you could yank a pair of socks down. And it was quite unique.
Yeah. Well, was it a foregone conclusion that you were going to go into a similar type business, or did you flirt with other careers? How did you settle on what you were going to do?
When I was in high school, I grew up in that business. And Dad was one of the top performers for Draper and Darwin. And just before World War II, I think I was 13 or 14, he opened his first store in Horse Cave. and
Under the name Young's.
Under the name Young's.
Mhm.
And this was done through the permission of Draper and Darwin.
Okay.
And he followed their buying habits. And in fact, when Draper and Darwin would go to market, why, they had asked Mr. Draper, he says, Jim, if whatever you buy for Franklin, why, just tell him to write me an order for it for for Horse Cave. And that's sort of the way he started off. And
Yeah.
they were compatible partners.
Well, so you, I guess, started out working for him, and then did you all become partners or associates, or how did the business
When
grow?
when I came out of World War II, Dad had lost a manager over in Russellville. We had the Russellville store, and a relative of my mother's from Nashville, Tennessee, came up, and he was managing that operation, and it was with the understanding that if I came back and was interested in the business, why, that's where I would start out. And we would find Lehman, mother's cousin, another location, and we did. He moved back to Nashville, and I operated the Russellville store.
You mentioned the war. What did you do during the war?
I was in the Navy.
The Navy. Okay.
In fact,
You were in the South
I ran across
Pacific,
your
or-
father. I ran across your father in
Really?
the South Pacific.
Huh. I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it was in Hawaii.
Yeah?
And so
Did
I
you
was
all realize, hey, we're two guys from Franklin?
not at that time. No, we
No?
didn't. But we
Okay.
didn't know this until in Sunday school one morning. We'd get talking, and he said something about it. And he says, I remember seeing you. And I said, yeah, I do now.
Well, small world, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So back from the war, started out in Russellville, and how many Young stores were there? There was Horse Cave and
There was
Russell?
Horse Cave in Russellville.
Okay. When did the store in Franklin open about?
This store in Franklin opened, I think it was in 1954 or 56.
Well, I mentioned that we're there on the corner of Main and Cedar.
Yeah,
That,
that was the old AMP building.
Okay, I was going to ask you what was there
Yeah.
first. Yeah.
Next door to that was Norwood's.
Yeah, okay. I don't know if you've noticed, but somebody has uncovered some old original posts of
Yeah,
what was that
they called
building.
me about that.
Oh, they did? Oh, okay.
And asked me what was under the facade. And I told them, I said, there's still the post, the corner post, the supports the I-beam across there, and they're still intact. And I noticed that they have torn all that front out that we built for display windows, and those three posts are exposed. They're cast iron design posts.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, they exposed some cast iron posts on mowers. And do you by chance remember when those were exposed the first go-round, or had they been covered up by the time you
I seem to remember Mr. Duncan and Red remodeled the front of that store sometime when I was in high school,
Okay.
before 1940.
So they might have boxed them
And they
in at
might have
that
boxed
point.
them in then.
Right, okay. Well, what was it like being in business at that time? We're talking basically in the 50s. Was there, did you have a lot of competition in the towns where you were located?
Yes. In the 50s, there were mostly local merchants, some chain stores, like here in Franklin. We had Lerman's and we had National Stores, and Draper and Darwin. And then later on, when I moved back to Franklin, there was Young's, and of course Gillespie's was in operation in our type of business. We had quite a few stores in that business. There were 3 drugstores on the square. There were, let's see, Hughes Hardware, Harris's. I remember 2 hardware stores on the square. And there was A&P, and there was Hills, and Kroger's, and they were all
right there on the square.
On the square.
Yeah. Were any restaurants on the square? Any places to go
Yeah. The one of the bright memories I have of Franklin, when we first came here, we got off the train and we walked from the railroad station down, and it was so crowded. It was right in the middle of strawberry season. And we came up to the corner, and here's this big hotel lobby, Franklin Hotel.
Which is where Sullivan's is today. Right? Yeah.
And they had a very nice dining room in the back.
Oh, okay.
And then you go on down, and Sammy Hughes Restaurant was in operation. And they were the two main restaurants on the square.
You mentioned the train. Did people travel by train a lot still in those days?
Yeah, you know, when, right after World War II, when I used to go to New York to market, we went by train.
Did you enjoy train travel?
I enjoyed the train travel. I really did. I enjoyed the food. The eating in the diner was just elegant.
Well, how did you, as being in the apparel business, styles change? And you're operating stores here in Kentucky. How do you know? I'm sure whatever you're going to sell for spring, you bought it maybe the summer or the fall before. How in the world do you know what to buy, and how do you anticipate what the customer is going to want?
That's a good question. Most of the time when you're buying a season ahead, and you try to plan your buying on past experience, of course. And the manufacturers and the people in the fashion world, whether it be men's or women's or children's, would come up with new colors to blend with certain colors, new fabrications, and you would have to try some of these in the beginning to see. And I know we had one of the biggest things that I ever had to happen to me in the retail business, as far as while I was in business, was when I got the account and sold Agner. Agner purses and Agner shoes. Everybody in Kentucky, that was sort of a signature basis. They wanted a purse with a horseshoe and an A on it.
Oh yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
And that fad lasted with us all for 4 or 5 years. And frequently, I'd say frequently, infrequently, you would hit on an item that the public just really took after, not knowing that they were going to do it that well. And so you'd have to dabble in it a little bit and see, and it started removing. Then you'd reorder and reorder and reorder.
Was some of the other people I've had on the program said that Saturday was a really big day because a lot of people from the country would come to town on Saturday.
Oh my goodness! Third Monday.
Court day.
Court day.
Okay.
And in Russellville, when I lived in Russellville, it was first Monday.
Oh, okay.
And Saturdays, you couldn't find a parking place around the square. That was the day that the farmers would come to town and do their shopping. When I lived in Russellville, I could tell the time of day with a certain customer coming to my store.
Because he'd
always get in there about 3 o'clock, and his wife would, she was nursing the baby, and I'd let her sit back in the shoe department. She'd nurse those babies, and he'd go out, and this man couldn't read or write his name, but he's one of the most successful farmers in Logan County, and he'd bring his tobacco check in or his wheat check in, and he'd say, Mr. Young, he said, I'm going to go out for a while, and I owe so-and-so and so-and-so so much of this check. Would you get this check cashed for me? And when they come in, pay them off, and you can have the money.
Oh, so you kind of sorted it out for him.
And
that was nice.
That was really trust, and I appreciated that.
Yeah. Well, that did stores operate on credit, most of them in those days?
No, it was cash.
Okay. One of my jobs when I was in high school. I worked for you at a building that was across from the old Simpson County High School up on the hill.
Yeah, that's when
It's called Walton Distributors.
Right.
I assume that was short for W.H. Young and Son.
That's
Is that
correct.
Right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So as the business grew, I guess you all had stores.
At one time,
how
we had
many?
9 stores.
9 stores. Were they all in Kentucky? Some
No,
down
we had
Tennessee?
3. We had 3 stores in Tennessee,
Okay.
and we had 6 stores in Kentucky.
So we were in a big building. Did you keep a lot of inventory in a central location?
That
and
building,
ship it out, or?
the reason that, and this is after I had made the deal and so acquired the business, so to speak, was I had to have a name to represent a wholesale company.
Mm-hmm.
And a good friend of mine in our buying office in New York said, Bill, you need a good name to separate your name from Young's Department Store if you want to get on a wholesale buying level.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought this name, Whison, it sounded like a lot of names that were right convenient in that type of business.
Okay.
And
it
it opened a lot of doors for me.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, yeah. So in addition to the 9 stores of Young's, you had other customers as well.
We had what we call a group of stores called imported independent retail stores.
Okay.
They paid Whison an annual fee to be a member of that group.
Mm-hmm.
They would buy off of our contracts,
Okay.
of which we made. Those contracts, or when we were making purchases, would be 20 to 25% less than what they were buying it if they were buying it directly
You could
themselves.
get a volume discount.
Right.
Because, okay.
And we had those merchandise shows down there 2 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And these people would come up. All the merchandise was charged to Whison distributors.
Mm-hmm.
And if we had what we call a drop shipment, if you came in and said, these shirts are packed in 6 dozen cases, we can drop ship them to you. I'd never touch them.
Oh, okay.
So on a drop shipment, we would charge you 3%.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it came into the warehouse and we had to split this 6 dozen up and share it with someone else, we would charge you 5%. But if we had to put it in stock and you come back to buy it, then it was 10%.
Okay.
Each level had a different cost to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I had 50 stores at one time that I was working.
Yeah. Sounds like you've got a good head for numbers and a good memory of that. You kind of remind me of Leon Page. You know Leon, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
And Leon ran a place called the Sweet Shop.
I remember it well.
And I was interviewing Leon, and he could tell me exactly what he paid for that ice cream and what he sold it for. And, you know, this was in the early 50s, but he knew exactly what his profit margin was on that ice cream.
You're talking about pricing. Before the war, when I was in high school and in college, I'd come back home and work in the store. We were buying overalls for $7 and a half a dozen.
Okay.
That's 62 and a half cents a piece.
Okay.
And if you got as many as 100 pounds, if you bought the overalls over 100 pounds and 5 dozen, I think it took it, you got your freight paid.
Oh, okay.
And to get a 100-pound shipment on a truck back in those days was $1.20 a hundred.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I don't know what it is, but the
Right.
last time that we don't get shipments by truck anymore. It's
No.
UPS
Oh, I see,
and UPS and Federal Express, these
Right.
short delivery people that I call, really was a salvation to the small retailer.
Yeah, you don't see as much of that, but I remember a lot of times you would have trucks double parked out on the street to unload merchandise.
Well, most
into
of the time,
store.
most of the time, our deliveries were made to the back door down that alley.
Yeah, okay, you had an alley.
We
where
had
you
an,
could
oh,
come
let
in
me
and
tell
say,
you about
yeah.
that alley.
Okay.
I'm 12, 13 years old, and it's on a Saturday. Someone comes in the store and says, they've got the Hardcastles in that garage down there, and they're going to raid them. I knew what they was talking about because they've been bootlegging.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, and Sheriff Garrett is going to be at the, going to head them off down at the end of the alley.
Uh-huh.
I ran back on the back. Our freight deck was about 10 feet off the ground.
Okay.
I'm standing on this deck. This car comes busting out of, I believe it was Black's garage at that time.
Okay.
Come out of there, guns are firing.
Oh, my.
And I stand there and I'm watching it. The car takes a right, and Sheriff Garrett is down there by this little cafe, Traveston. And they come up there and he shoots in that car, and it had glass-proof glass on it.
Oh. Huh.
And they finally catch this guy the next day up on Chief Dobbs and Sheriff Garrett.
Huh.
Captured him up there on the railroad track, and somehow.
Yeah, but they didn't get him at the end of the alley.
No, but I saw that.
The whole thing go down.
Yeah, bullets flying around.
Oh, didn't you want to duck for cover? Probably too fascinated by what was going on. Well, tell me, over the years that you were in business, did you have a lot of turnover in employees, or did you have people who, once they started with you, stayed for a number of years?
No, we didn't have too much turnover.
Okay.
Our sales force was women,
Mm-hmm.
and Danny, some of the finest people I've ever known.
Yeah.
I have worked with.
Yeah.
And I have a lady in Centerville, Tennessee that I've got to go see,
Mm-hmm.
that was working with us down in Centerville.
Mm-hmm.
Christine Finn, and I could just name a lot of people. Elizabeth Tribble. These people are just they were fine, honest, hardworking, honest, good salespeople,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a great bond there of more like of a family.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of family, didn't some of your family follow you into the same business?
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, Bill did, and he still has 2 stores in operating, but Bill is
He's in Madisonville.
he's
is
in
that right?
Madisonville,
Right.
and we still have
Married a local girl.
married yes sir, married that pretty little Burr girl.
Yeah. How many
Nadine.
grandchildren you got, Bill?
I got 11 grandchildren. I've got 2 great grandchildren,
Wow.
and counting Connie's 2 grandchildren, so we got 13 grandchildren.
Yeah, it keeps you busy spoiling all those grandchildren, doesn't it? Yeah. You, in your line of work, I know you got to travel quite a bit. I know you had to go to New York some and probably other places. Do you like travel, or are you more of a homebody? Or?
Now I'm a homebody. I never cared much for traveling. It's one of the things that was necessary in our business. But now, for the past 25 years, I'd just rather be in Franklin, Kentucky than anywhere.
Well, speaking of Franklin, I know that I think it was in the 60s you served on the city council.
Served on the city council.
How did somebody ask you to run, or did you decide you wanted to give
No,
something back?
I was asked to run.
I see.
Some of the people, well, it was Henry Broderson, one of the ones that asked me to run.
Now, was Henry the mayor at the
Henry
time
was
you were
mayor.
on? Okay.
And Gordon Guthrie, Chisholm, and
Now, that would have been, Mr. Broderson was after Paul Massey, right?
Yes,
The mayor.
uh-huh.
Do you remember the Masseys? You remember Paul and Sykes?
Paul and Sykes Massey were dear friends of mine, great confidants of mine. I'd go to
Right,
them
yeah.
a lot of times. In fact, before I bought that farm out there next to the country club and developed Huntington Park, I talked to Paul Massey about that, and and Sykes, and they were great supporters of me. I talked it over with my father, and he said it wouldn't work.
What, too far from town?
Yeah, something. But anyway, I felt like it would. And Paul and Sykes Massey were very dear friends of mine.
Mm-hmm. Had you done much in real estate before you developed a Huntington Park subdivision?
No, I had always looked at pieces of properties, and I'd say that, well, you know, that property will turn into a residential area. That property would be good for business. And in most times, well, that happened. And I just had a feel for it, I guess.
Yeah.
And when I bought the pet milk property down there, north of town, I had a feel for that. But
is that where the Walmart wound up locating?
That's where I think that store there, that Walmart store, was the 4th store they opened in Kentucky.
Is that right? Yeah. What's your take? You know, some people say that Walmarts have killed small mom and pop retail and downtowns, and other people say, you know, Walmart's have just been a wonderful thing for this country. And
well, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah.
These people are huge. They're the largest retailers in the world. And they grew from a theory that I had myself back in those days when I was trying to organize these stores and build. I did not have the I guess, organization to do it. But Walmart has grown, and that type of business has been a part of eliminating the small merchant. But the small merchant was being hurt before that time, severely. When the malls opened in Bowling Green,
right,
Rivergate opened, with the expressway being built,
right,
it took you 30 minutes to get to Rivergate. It took you 15, 20 minutes to get to the mall in Bowling Green.
right.
And those big retail stores, those department stores, offered so much more variety, large inventories, than what a Young's or a Gillespie's or a Lerman's could on the square. So those people, they started going there. So I don't blame it all on Walmart.
The trend was already there.
The transportation system of our country, the interstates have taken away the business locally.
Yeah, you don't drive through towns anymore like you used to.
Now, you go back, and we used to have Sugar's out at Middleton. We had Gold City Store. We had out on Ramsey's out in Rapids. We had a lot of stores in the county.
Oh, yeah.
But when our county roads became paved and could get into town, those people started coming into town and hurting those small stores out in the county. And it's just like going through a sifter.
Yeah.
The smaller go through first.
Yeah, yeah. Well, did you ever meet Sam Walton?
Yes, sir.
What was he like?
He was a great man.
Yeah.
I met him. I met one of his constituents who I did business with, Dora Rogers Company, in Arkansas. And he and Mr. Rogers were very close friends. And when you become that big and you have capital, public stock, and you increase your capitalism with public investment, you get that ball rolling.
Right.
And Dora Rogers was instrumental in that growth because he would buy the properties, build the buildings, and lease them to Sam Walton.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And Sam was not a purchaser of real estate.
Oh, okay.
He did his through retailing.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
now, I don't know how it is today, but that was when I dealt with him.
Well, let's come back from Sam Walton in Arkansas back to Franklin.
Yeah.
We were talking about Huntington Park. Now that, of course, is north of town, and it was near the Franklin Country Club. And the original country club building burned, but wasn't your dad kind of instrumental in getting that country club started? I know he liked to play golf.
I was living in Russell, Kentucky, and on the visit, of course, we saw each other nearly weekly. But I was over here. He says we're gonna buy some land out there and build a golf course. And he says, oh, I want you to buy some stock in it. And stock was $100.
Mm-hmm.
Several people bought stock that never used it. But the three main people in putting that club together was Herbert Young, Roy Steers, and Mr. Paul James.
Mm-hmm.
And Paul James, I don't know that ever played golf, but he liked the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I moved from Russell to Franklin, the club was just open, and it's been a great asset to the city of Franklin, because over the years there have been a lot of industries I think we're influenced by.
And I have heard that back in the day there were some pretty good meals served out there at the country club.
Yes, sir. Annabelle Jenkins, she served on Sundays. You just could hardly get in. It was filled every Sunday. We used to have a lot of people from Bowling Green Country Club come down here and eat on
come
Sundays.
down to eat. Yeah, some of her recipes I think are famous. Yeah. Well, we had a fella in the clothing business named Billy Walton, who became mayor of Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
You were in a similar line of work. You became mayor of Franklin. What is it about selling shoes and hats and shirts that prepares a man to be the mayor?
I would say being mayor of a small town is sort of like running a small business.
Mm-hmm.
You don't overestimate your gross income, your gross sales.
Okay. You can get in trouble if you do.
You can get in trouble. And you overestimate your expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Don't underestimate your expenses.
Mm-hmm.
And in putting a budget together for the public, you don't want to get yourself in trouble, say we can operate this city with X amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
when it's going to take more.
Mm-hmm.
Or you're going to say our revenues are going to be so much, and when they don't come in, you can get yourself in trouble. Same way within the retail business.
Mm-hmm. You said that when you were a city councilman in the 60s that Henry Broderson asked you to run.
Uh-huh.
Were you asked to run for mayor, or how were you persuaded to give that a go?
That was a funny situation. Several people called me and said, you're retired and you got time to be mayor. And I said, well, I don't think I want to do that. I was a little... And kept talking to me, and so I said, they said, well, we'd like you. I said, well, there was another party. I said, why don't you get him to run for mayor?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to him about it. And I was going to Arizona to see my mother and father. I was going to be out there during the January and February. And this fellow says, well, fill out these papers, and we won't submit them, and we'll talk to this other fellow.
Okay.
And it was John Kelly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John has shared that with me, but
And so he wouldn't do it. So I get
John was still had his dental practice.
Still had his dental practice.
Right.
Had boys in college.
Right.
So this fellow called me in Arizona one morning. He says, we can't get another candidate, and looks like we're going to. I said, well, now wait, let me talk it over with my wife. Well, it's too late. We've already taken it to the...
Been drafted, in other words.
So I came. All right. So I came home, and I had filed.
Yeah. Well, now, I remember you campaigning pretty hard. I remember you standing and holding up signs right on Main Street and going out to the fair. So how'd you like campaigning?
You know, I got, that's a good memory to me.
Is it? Yeah.
I started off, I carried me a yellow legal pad, and if I remember correctly, I knocked on, made 2,700 visits.
2,700?
A little over 2,700. And I wrote the person's name.
Mm-hmm.
down, their address.
Down on that yellow legal
On
pad.
that legal pad,
Yeah.
and what they were doing, what business they were in, or where they were working, or how long you live in Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a thing that surprised me, that 20% of the people that I interviewed had lived in Franklin less than 10 years
Really?
at that time.
And I don't think most people would have thought that.
They had come here with the plants.
Mm-hmm.
And you see, this also brings up another thought. See, I have seen, I call it the Industrial Revolution in Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I sat on the industrial board with Red Freeland, Red Duncan, Paul Massey, Mr. Richardson,
Okay.
and I was the youngest one on there. I just moved to Franklin. Here I am, about 27 years old, 28 years old. And we met with Colonel Link
Mm-hmm.
of Link Manufacturing
Right.
in the dining room of the old Franklin Hotel.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
where we had our first meeting with him.
Yeah, he was from up in the Northeast somewhere,
Yeah.
Boston or somewhere.
And that was, we got them, and then Paul Massey made a lot of trips and spent a lot of his own money in encouraging, at that time, Kindle
Mm-hmm.
to come.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was Potter and Broomfield.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the snowballing effect
Right.
of industrializing Simpson County.
Mm-hmm.
And Danny, when we came to Franklin in 1927, the first night we were in Franklin, or the first 2 or 3 nights, we stayed in the old Commerce Hotel.
See, I don't remember that.
The Commerce Hotel was a big old frame building on the railroad track right across from the depot. It's an empty lot now, I think.
Was there a boarding house there?
Yeah.
Okay.
ended up
I can remember that building standing
okay.
there. I just didn't remember
And
this Commerce Hotel.
we got off the train and went, I don't recall what luggage we had or where we left it there or not, but we went on downtown, and at that time I remember in front of the Methodist church that it was all gravel. Now, whether at that time they were just repaving that through there, but I definitely remember that was
Just
gravel.
yeah.
And there was an old theater over on that side,
Oh, really? Yeah.
next to where Hughes Hardware. It was in the building next door to the what was at that time the American Dry Cleaners.
Okay. Well, see, I remember the Roxy and the Liberty, but
Yeah.
I don't remember the one you're talking
Yeah,
about.
there was no theater there,
Yeah.
and then we had the Liberty.
Right.
But
I've been in the Liberty, yeah.
then the Roxy was built about the time that the Goodnight Memorial
The
library was
and
built.
auditorium was built. Yeah, I think that was about 36, if
Yeah.
I'm remembering right on that. Yeah, yeah. Well, getting back to the fact that you ran for mayor and got elected in '89, at that time we did not have the city manager form of government. So
No.
the mayor was the more had
He
to be
had
the
about 80.
hands-on.
Yeah, he had about 80% of the administrative power.
Right. But now your business career, you were semi-retired, and what the people that talked you into it said was pretty much true. You had
Yeah.
the time. Did you realize how much time it was going to take before you got into it?
No, I didn't. To do it right, as a mayor under those circumstances, you had to do it just like you were operating a business.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to be at one of the departments every morning at 7 o'clock when they went to work, to the maintenance department, or to change and shift at the water plant. Then I'd get back to the office, City Hall, at 8 o'clock. But I usually made the rounds and see what I could do to help out.
I've got a memory that, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I was at a city council meeting. You were presiding, and there was a lot on the agenda, and it was getting late, and it was going on between 11 o'clock and midnight. And there was something you all were talking about that needed to look at, and the mayor and a councilman needed to go look at it. And Smo Walker was serving on the council at that time, and
Good councilman.
He says, "Well, I'll go with you, Mayor. We'll go look at it." And you said, "Fine. What time?" And Smo says, "Oh, I don't know, Mr. Bill. I like to start kind of early. Would you want to be there at 5? And you looked at him and you said, "I'll see you at 4:30. And Smo's eyes got just as big.
I remember that. I don't know if it was 4:30 or not, but we were out there pretty early. What it was the drain down through this land off of High Street. I believe it's High Street. Joe lived in a house on that street. Is it High Street that goes up the hill by the old high school? Across railroad track?
No, that's Water Street there.
No, not Water Street.
Behind the high. He lived on North Street.
North Street.
North Street, yeah. Okay.
And so we were walking. They were talking about all this water backing up down in there.
Oh, that's right. It run off.
Down,
north.
went north.
Yeah.
And so he was talking about it, and I said, "All right, let's go out there and walk it out and see what's it about." Smoke comes back, said he had a hard time keeping up with me.
Keeping up with you. That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I know when you came in, the city finances were in bad shape. Between the time you got elected and the time you actually took office, did you go out to City Hall? Did you have any idea the predicament that you were in until you showed up the first day for work? Did you?
I learned it I went into office on a Tuesday. January the 1st was on Monday. I found out really all about it on Friday when we.
Oh, okay. So you didn't have a lot of notice then as to what the situation was.
But we worked things out, and we had a compatible council, and we didn't put any blame on anyone necessarily. We just took the circumstances as they were.
I remember you had some guys that put in some pretty long hours. Some of those council meetings went on into the
yes, we did
hours, and
they were very patient with me.
Now the vote to go to the city manager form of government, that took place, I guess, right at the end of your term as mayor, didn't it?
We had one vote in my third year.
We did. Okay.
That failed.
Oh, okay.
Then we got the next election, the next year. I think we had to do it in cooperation with another election. I don't know.
Right. So it had to coincide with when you would change terms.
So it was that was done in my fourth year, and we succeeded in that. And I'm still convinced that this is the proper way to run a city.
Well, with the advent of the city manager form, it looks like the mayor's workload would have gone down a little bit. Did you think about running for a second term?
Yes, I did, and I would have, except my wife did not want me to do it because, if you recall, the front of my house was shot out.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we never found the culprit who did that. And it was after we had made some moves in controlling the illegal sale of alcohol and activities, and she didn't want me to run after that.
Well, that's certainly understandable. I mean, if you can't feel safe on your own property, which is a shame. But do you look back overall? I mean, I know that what you just told me about was a terrible incident, but overall, do you feel a sense of accomplishment in the 4 years that you were in that office?
I think that with the council that I had and the feeling of the public, that we did a good job, and the council and everything that was done was brought before the council. I had to break some tie votes. I brought up some programs that were not popular, but you can't run a car on an empty tank of gas.
That's right.
And we were in a position that we, according to times, the city was growing. Gosh, I can remember when right here where we're sitting, and right over there where the school is. When I was a boy, I used to come up here and quail hunt.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a pond right back over there. It'd freeze over, and this is where we'd come go ice skating.
Yeah.
This city has grown so much. The first major residential development that was made over here in Bluegrass Estates.
Mm-hmm.
I think that Dr. Beasley and Red Duncan
Mm-hmm.
had the foresight to see that the city is growing, and
Right.
we had to have
The
some
Highlands, is that
the
what you-
Highlands, yeah, the Highlands.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And over the years, I have, as many of us have talked about, we are no less than any other city because all of them have grown.
Mm-hmm.
Russellville, it's just the times, and we have kept up with the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, after a long business career and a busy 4 years as mayor, I would think that it would have been tempting to move somewhere where it was warm and sit out in the sun, but I know you get out and you sell insurance, and you're still working, and
Yeah.
you're still living here, and
Yes, sir.
so you plan to just keep working? I mean, is full retirement something that you're looking forward to, or you want to stay away from?
No. I for about 4 years I didn't do anything and played golf nearly every day and kept my yard, and then when this mayor thing came by, I consented to do that, and after that I just got used to getting up and going to work, and 3 years ago I read this about American Family Life Insurance, and I thought, well, I'll take an interview.
Okay.
And I told them, I said, look, I said, I've never worked for anybody else. I've worked for the public,
Mm-hmm.
and I've pretty well been my own boss.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'm selfish in that respect. And I said, I like to play golf when I want to. If I want to take a notion and go to see Kentucky play football, I'm going to go.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, we think we'd like to have you. So I'm an independent contractor
Mm-hmm.
with this insurance company, and I just call on businesses and set up cafeteria plans and
Mm-hmm.
payroll accounts.
You don't carry that duck around with you, do you?
No, I have. You know, that is a remarkable thing. That opens so many doors.
Yeah.
That advertising program is fantastic.
Yeah, I just read an obituary not long ago. Some fellow in the advertising business died, and he was noted for creating slogans, advertising slogans that everybody remembers. He was the guy that came up with a ring around the collar,
Uh-huh.
and I rather fight than switch, and some of those slogans. And that Aflac thing is probably another one of those that's
Well, it's
gonna.
been a fun thing, and I enjoy it, and it's renewed a lot of old acquaintances that I have had,
Mhm.
and of course any acquaintance that I've had would probably be old, but I'm getting back to doing some business with companies that
Mhm.
I had some contact with,
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any time to go and drink coffee with the guys and shoot the breeze, or are you too busy for that?
No, I get down to the coffee club 3 or 4 times a week.
Do you?
And we hash out things. We always like to listen to Dr. Beasley, and
Mhm.
and he's our senior citizen down there. And
I guess he's what, 95, 96 years old?
96, I think.
Yeah, we've had him on this program.
He's got a lot of
before.
wit to him, and
Uh-huh.
talking about wit. When my dad had his stroke, and he was laying in bed, I go in there one December the 3rd, and when I went in, I visited Dad daily, he'd always say, "What'd you shoot?" Well,
Talking
that
about
day,
your golf game,
yeah, talk about my golf.
Okay.
That day I go in, I said, "Dad couldn't play golf today." I said, "It's snowing outside." And when you tell Dad something, he'd always say, "Is that so?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what day this is?" "Oh, I don't know. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, someday during the week." I said, "No, it's your birthday." I said, "How old are you?" He said, laid there, and he says, "Oh, I guess 65, 75, 85, 90, somewhere along in there."
A pretty good range there.
I said, "You're 95 years old." "How old are you?" I said, "I'm 75. He said, "I never thought I'd live long enough to have an old man for a son." He was funny.
Yeah.
He was funny.
Well, do you mind me asking how old you are now?
I'm 82.
So you got a ways to go before you catch up.
Oh,
to
yeah,
him,
I'm just
so.
a kid.
Just a kid.
Just
All
a
right.
kid.
Well, you hang in there. Well, I've had fun talking to you, Bill.
Well, this has been fun. There's so much of Franklin I could talk about that it is a wonderful place. It's and after I had my heart surgery, I'd come down and walk around the square.
Mm-hmm.
It's a quarter of a mile exactly on the inside of the
oh, okay.
brick walk
Yeah, that's
around
a
the
quarter mile.
courthouse.
Okay, all right.
So I'd come down, I'd walk from home. It's
Yeah.
exactly half a mile.
Okay.
I'd walk around the square
Uh-huh.
4 times,
All right.
made
there's
them a
a
mile.
Yeah.
I walked back home, so I'd walk 2 miles.
Oh, yeah, you did
And
exactly your distance
in that
there.
walking around the square, I would meet so many people. I remember one day I met these 2 couple over next to the fountain. And they said, "Have you lived in Franklin very long?"
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah, pretty good while." And the lady says, "Well, I grew up here. I was born here, and we left.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, and we were just passing through on 65, and we stopped and we thought." And she asked about several points in Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And several times I'd run across people like that, and how people would come in and stop in Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And our courthouse, our square, and I have been in every county in Kentucky.
Okay, yeah.
There's none that
No?
excels ours. There's just none. That we just have the most beautiful square,
Uh-huh.
and it's such a setting that it's a dream place.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've had a big part in what's gone on in this community for many, many years, and I hope you can continue to play a part for many years to come.
Well, thank you. You know, when I came over here, moved here from Russellville, Chamber of Commerce asked me to make a survey, and on our graduating high school students.
Right.
Only 13% of our students that were graduating from high school were remaining in the county.
They
at
were
that
moving
time.
somewhere else,
Going
looking for
someplace else,
jobs.
looking
yeah.
for jobs.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's something that over the years, the industrial board, which you served on, and other organizations, you know, have been trying to address, because those of us who grew up here do think that it's a pretty special place. So keeping people from here and having opportunities for them is something, you know, that...
There's one thing that I hope I can live to see, is that we can take, what I'd love to see is that empty Walmart building down there, taken and put into a youth center or a community center. They got the parking and everything there. I just would hope that we can get something worked out. I think it'd make a wonderful
you got
location.
infrastructure already in place. So, yeah. Well, I guess time will tell on that. Yeah. Well, our time's up.
Okay.
It's gone by fast. I want to thank my guest, Bill Young, for coming in and reminiscing a little bit with us. Bill has been an active businessman in Franklin and a political leader. And as you can tell from our conversation, he's still going strong at age 82. So we may have to have him back again in another decade or so and catch up again. My thanks to Bill, and my thanks to you for watching.